welcome to the Watering Hole. We're sitting down today with Trenton from Iron Monk. You are the head brewer at Iron Monk, correct?
That is correct.
So we're very gracious, or very thankful that you have given us the opportunity to be able to represent your brand here at Calf Rye, and we're very thankful for you coming on and talking about the beer.
I'm excited. Yeah, I think someone from our team had connected you guys to us, and I saw the email come through and thought, this is a really cool opportunity. I've been coming to Calf Rye for a long time. Haven't been in a few years, but I grew up coming out here, and I love making beer, and had just had the opportunity. It was a kind of a spur of the moment thing. One of the things I love to do is make beer partnerships. So not only do I love the beer, but I really wanted to grow beer through making friends, if that makes sense. And I knew that Calf Rye was a really cool place that sold a lot of beer. I mean, I remember more beer than I remember songs from the times I used to come out here.
I bet that's most people's recollection of Calf Rye.
Yeah, no, it's meant for beer, I think, and great music. So when I called Calf Rye and asked about doing a can and a special edition beer, it clicked. It was an immediate yes. It was that sounds like a really cool opportunity. And then, as far as I know, I haven't seen them yet, but I think they made T-shirts and everything else with the beer. And so it was a really cool, just direct connection of, we're a local brewery. We make the beer here in Stillwater. We love country music. We're all cowboys. So it made sense. And so getting to make the beer was a really cool opportunity. And then when you guys asked to talk about it, I'm like, this is all going together really well.
Yeah, perfect. So me and you have the actual Calf Rye Music Fit Fest beer. I'll show the camera. It's probably too far away to see. But and Rhett, I grabbed him a Stilly Wheat out of the cook cooler just to change it up a little bit. And your Stilly Wheat's kind of like your trademark beer, correct? Yeah.
So actually, I'm going to crack this open and have a beer while we're here. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, that's nice. Stilly Wheat was really the staple of Iron Monk. So I came on in September of 2021, right after COVID. I decided I wanted to do something different with my life. And I never homebrewed. I wasn't one of those guys that brewed in his garage or anything like that. I had no experience. I knew I liked drinking beer, and we had a craft brewery in town, and I thought that I could bring some of my business acumen into the beer world. And so I relished at the opportunity to come and do that. So Stilly Wheat was our number one selling beer. It was the lightest beer that Iron Monk made. I say lightest. There's an amber that we make that's 4%. It's a little lighter in terms of alcohol content. But in terms of general palate and what people typically drink, Stilly Wheat was the beer that fit most people's palate. It's a really nice, crisp, clean, wheat beer with coriander and orange peel. So it's kind of more of a Belgian style wheat with some American twist. So it's a really...
Sorry to interrupt you. I was talking about the orange peel.
Yeah.
I thought there was something in there like that.
Yeah, you're picking up on it. So, was our flagship beer. At one point the can, it's kind of gone through different iterations. At one point the can actually said "Loyal and True" on it because we tried to connect it to OSU before we were partners with OSU, and we got told that's not okay.
Yeah, so I figured they would crack down on that.
That got shut down a long time ago. But people kind of associated Oklahoma State, the orange can, Stilly Wheat. It was kind of this connection. And we sold a lot of that beer. We still do. So it's probably our number 2 selling beer at Iron Monk. The number 1 would be the 1890 Original, which is the official beer of Oklahoma State. That partnership came on. We're in our this will be our third football season of the 1890 Blonde Ale. Little higher in terms of alcohol content, so that one comes in at 5.2. We were very intentional when we made that beer. We wanted the alcohol content to reflect the number of national championships that Oklahoma State had won at the time. So at that point in time, there were 52, so we made the beer 5.2%. Since then, we've won one more, so we're at 53. And our tennis team, which we actually made a tennis edition 1890 can that'll be at the national championships this coming month, or this month. Toward the end of the month, the Cowgirls are number 1 in the world and are expected to win. So we're going to go to 5.4. And so what we do there is every time we win a national championship, instead of actually changing the beer, we have a quote. We say change the beer, and we all go crazy on Twitter.
Yeah.
But we don't actually change the beer. When we buy cans like Stilly Wheat, they're printed, and so we buy a little over 200,000 cans when we do that. So we can't just change the can and change the beer and go to 5.3% because we have a bunch of stock that wouldn't reflect that. So what we're able to do is just make these shrink wraps, which is what the calf fry can is. So it still looks printed. It still has the same quality that the Stilly Wheat does, but it's just a shrink wrap label. Instead of doing stickers, which we just don't do any sticker labels. We think the quality comes through a little better with this. But we just do limited edition cans, and so people collect them and they buy them and they think it's really cool. So that's kind of become a process. So we do a can for each sport. We do cans for homecoming. We do cans for national championships, all through the 1890 brand.
That's awesome.
Do you have like a personal favorite?
In terms of the beers we make, yeah. So that's a great question. At one point in time, 1890 was my number one beer. I think I probably drink more of that than any other beer that we make. But this calf rye beer and our new cerveza, the Iron Sombrero, are definitely up there. Those three beers, they can get me through a weekend real easy.
So let's take a little step back here. So I am very ignorant about like the specifics of like what goes into making a beer and like what constitutes an IPA, what's a pale ale, what are these terms. So like for somebody that's like looking at this like from more of like a consumer standpoint, that's like I'm at Walmart and I see Stilly Wheat 1890 and the cerveza on the shelf, and they're like, what is like some of this terminology that you're like putting out there? How are you classifying the beers for like how you brew them, so stuff like that?
Yeah, so there is an official, I can't remember, I never get the acronym right, but it's an official organization that classifies beer. And so beer actually will fall into those categories in the way they judge. If you ever go to a judging contest, you have to enter beers in certain categories based on the style and what I'm about to say. But that is a kind of a unique concept of all these different beers. So there's a ton of different styles of beers, hundreds and hundreds of different styles of beers. It really falls into two categories for the most part. Almost every beer in the world falls into one of two categories. So it's either an ale or a lager. So we make very few lagers because they take a lot longer to produce. A ale, for example, all the beers we're drinking now are all ales. They're going to take 21 days to get fermented, to get finished, to get cold, and then it's just how quickly I can carbonate it, and then get it into a can. So we're talking 21 days to get a brand new beer out the door. A lager minimum, and certainly in a craft brewery setting, is going to take 4 months to lager. So it's an actual process where it's conditioned cold on the yeast. So and they're different styles of yeast. So those two categories fall into different styles of yeast. So ale yeast and lager yeast. One ferments at the bottom of the tank, one ferments at the top of the tank, one ferments warm, one ferments cold. So they have these, and they give different flavor characteristics. So a lot of where your flavor can come from is from your yeast. We made, a while back, we actually made two beers the exact same, used the same exact wort, which is what beer is before it has any alcohol in its wort. It's just like sugar water. Used the exact same sugar water and put Belgian yeast in one and regular yeast in the other, and you would have never known they were the same beer. Nothing was different about them except the yeast. So yeast plays a factor in how beers are determined. And within lagers, you have cervezas, you have dunkels, you have all these. You can then branch out. In ales, you can have a brown ale, a stout, a wheat ale, a sour ale. This is technically the calf rye beer is a unique one. We don't really know what it is. I think we entered it as a Kolsch into Oklahoma Craft Brewery Fest. It was an annual competition where it took first place. It was the best light European beer in the state, which is awesome, and I completely agree. But we entered as a Kolsch, won as a Kolsch. But a Kolsch is going to be a little higher bitter unit. It's going to be a little bit heavier bodied beer, where this truly is a Miller Lite, but a Miller Lite's a Pilsner. Pilsner is a lager.
Yeah. So
we made an ale that was the exact same as a lager without having to lager it for 4 months. That was the kind of the goal.
Wow.
And all the grain in this beer is all Pilsner malt. So it's essentially we use the same hops that you'd use in a Miller Lite. We use the same grain as a Miller Lite. We just used a ale yeast so we could make it faster.
So can you break it down in kind of for a dummy like myself, like how is beer made, just in kind of a summarized sense?
Sure. So there's 4 ingredients in all beer. What makes a beer? You have water, you have malt, which would be your grains. They're just malted. So what happens is they take them to a malting facility where they get them wet, they let them start to grow. They put them in growing conditions so that seed starts to grow and pack itself with sugar, and then they dry it out. All I want from the grain is the sugar. So we have water, we've got malt, we have yeast, and we have hops. Those are the 4 things that make all beer. And so to your point or your question about what an IPA is and what a pale ale is and what a wheat ale, it goes down to your recipe. So every beer has water. That's no big deal. In Iron Monk, all of our ales have the exact same yeast. We use the same yeast. It's a house yeast we use for every beer. So the yeast is the same. The things that differ are the grains or the malts and the hops. An IPA is going to have a whole lot more hop characteristic. We're going to use a lot more hops in the boil, which makes it bitter. Hops is what give you that bittering flavor. So if you use a bunch of hops in the boil, you're going to get a bitter beer. You can also dry hop beer, which means after it's fermented, you add a whole bunch of hops to the finished beer, and it won't add any bitter, but it adds all those. If you've ever smelled a hop, there's thousands of them. They smell floral and piney and citrusy and all these different flavors. So if you dry hop a beer, you crack open the 9 or one of the beers we make that's a really strong or a really dry hop IPA, you get all these aromas that you don't really get off of. This beer is very low aromatic. The Stilly Wheat's got a little bit of citrusy aroma from the orange peel we use. But yeah, so those are the ingredients, and then how we use them and how we implement them kind of creates the beer, and then also creates the style. A pale ale is going to be a little less bitter than an IPA, and it's going to be pale in color, so that's going to come from your malt. But then the hoppiness and the bitterness comes from the hops we use. And then a milk stout's going to be darker caramelized malts that give it that dark color. So we use chocolate malts and roasted barley and all these different styles of malt that create different colors. And so you can really get creative with beer. And we did with this. We kind of created a new style of beer by just saying, how can we make the lightest beer possible without taking 4 months? And that's kind of what we tried to do.
Yeah. I've heard nothing but compliments on this beer the whole time we've been here. Every artist that we come on was like, man, this is like really, really smooth. Like, one of the Flatland guys said it was chuggable. Yeah. It's very chuggable.
Yeah. No, it's funny. That's, I grew up, I'm from the area, so I grew up around here, and I wasn't familiar with West Coast IPAs and New England IPAs or double IPAs or even milk stouts or anything like that. So I grew up drinking Coors Light, Miller Lite. I think my first beer ever was a Bush Heavy in the back of a buddy's truck that was warm and sitting out all day from a fishing trip. Wasn't any good. But then that night, I think my second beer was probably like a Keystone Light. So I drank light beer, and I wanted to create a beer that was just like that. And I say just like that, but something that I could sit here and we could have more than one and have a good time and be fine, and we're not feeling heavy and we're not chewing on all these extra flavors, and something that was good and drinks well but doesn't bog you down.
Yeah.
How does the alcohol content play a factor in beers? Like, why is the one have a 5% and one might have a 4.8 or whatever it is?
Yeah, so that's going to come from the grain. How much malted grain we use determines how much sugar. So realistically, the only thing we're getting out of the malted grain, you're going to get. So in 1890, we used Vienna and we used biscuit. So you're going to get these different flavor profiles. You're going to get this more more biscuity, bready feel from that beer that comes from the malt. But ultimately, we could take that same beer and we could make it 7% by just adding more of all those ingredients, of all those malts. So instead of using 33 bags, which all of our bags are 55 pounds. So instead of using 33 bags, we could use 53 bags, just scale everything up, and we'd have a 9% blonde ale. So all that has to do with how much sugar is in the liquid when the yeast starts to eat it. So, for example, this beer, I think, had 26 bags of grain. Came in at 4.2%. Stilly Wheat's at 33 bags. It comes in at 4.5. 1890, based on, it's also what styles of grain. Some convert sugar better than others. So Stilly Wheat's a 33-pound beer, or 33-bag beer as well, but it comes in higher alcohol because of the sugar conversion. But what we're getting out of those malted grains is they go through a mill, they all get cracked open, and so that sugar, all that sugar is accessible to the liquid. We put it into a warm water bath, essentially. It's called a mash. So in that mash is where those sugars come out of solution. So we're left with this oatmeal-y kind of mash tun, and then we transfer that liquid out of the mash tun into a kettle through our system where there's grate, so the grain doesn't come with it, only the water or only the liquid. And then we boil that, add hops to that so that there's bitterness and there's balance, and then we transfer it out after an hour into a tank. And then we add yeast. The yeast eats the sugar and turns sugar into alcohol and CO2. CO2 we bubble out of the tank. And so if you ever seen a fermenting beer or been to a brewery and seen a bucket of water just bubbling away, that's the yeast eating in there, turning all the sugar into alcohol, and its off gas is CO2, so it's coming out of the tank into a blow off. And so that's kind of how we know something's actually fermenting is that bucket, that blow off bucket, just going crazy.
What's your closest beer to a Blue Moon? Because this reminds me a lot of a Blue Moon.
Yeah, so Stilly Wheat, it's the only wheat beer we make, and a Blue Moon's is a kind of a Belgian style wheat. So that would be our direct comparison there, and I think that's why it's done so well for us. I think a lot of places used to serve it with an orange slice even, and you'd get that nice draft Blue Moon style beer. And it still is one of our best beers. It's done really well. I think Pistol Pete helps sell the 1890.
Yeah, sure.
There's that brand recognition.
Yeah. I got to recognize the fit he's got going on here. He's got the orange and black Nikes on down here, and he's sporting the 1890 quarter zip and the dad hat up there.
Yep. I even have an 1890 shirt on underneath.
Oh wow!
In case it was hot, I was going to switch out.
He's riding for the brand.
Like I said, I brought some in the truck, and I was going to bring it in, and thought I kind of forgot there was a bunch of stuff going on. This may not work out. So I left it in the truck.
Yeah.
It's funny what you can get away with if you are official and you act official, though. It's like,
exactly.
I'm here for this.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. There's this funny video kind of meme that people do is them dressing up as construction workers and carrying a ladder and getting into any event ever.
Yeah.
And it's I'm here to work on it, and they're like, oh, okay.
Of course you are. Oh, right in here. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how I parked. I said, I'm here to do a podcast, blah blah blah, and they're like, oh yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Just park right up front.
That's awesome. That's great. Good deal.
I may use that again tonight. We'll see.
Yeah, perfect.
Speaking of tonight, who are you excited to see out here tonight?
Yeah, so my wife and I both kind of independently of ourselves, of each other, we're really big fans of Muscadine Bloodline. I, at this point, years ago, we've been married now almost 3 years. Prior to that, I had been a fan for multiple years, and they're a lot bigger now than they were 7 years ago when I started listening to those guys.
Yeah.
And I knew very few people that knew who they were, or a lot of people don't necessarily know some of those independent country. They're not listening to the radio. They're not going to hear these guys sometimes.
Yeah.
But anyway, long story short, we both started dating and talking about who we listen to and what music we love, and oddly enough, I said, oh, well, I love this band, Muscadine Bloodline. And she's like, no way. I listen, that's my number one Spotify.
It was a sign.
Yeah, and it worked. And, we've come, actually watched them out here at the Tumbleweed a few years ago. We've been to Kane's Ballroom to, listen to them. And then our first dance at our wedding was Put Me in My Place by Muscadine. So we're very partial to those guys and excited to see them tonight.
That's awesome. So you guys have you guys host some live acts there at Iron Monk. What is some of your favorite live acts that you've had there at the brewery? Yeah,
so that's that's I'm gonna have a kind of a manager answer for you. As a as you know, I would say the number 2 in charge of the company. You know, the owners are both 1A, 1B, 1A, 1A essentially.
Yeah.
And then I kind of run everything from there.
Yeah.
You spend a lot less time at Iron Monk when you're that level, because you can't just go in and listen to a band or anything like that. So I'll drink a beer and after work, and then I get out of there and I go home. So I'm not there on Thursdays during live music very often. We've had some really good people come through. Actually, one of the owner's wife, the Morgan band, they come play a lot, and they really bring a good crowd. This is a really random one, but a guy out of Texas, I would butcher his last name, but his name is Alex. First name's Alex. He's one of my best friends, his cousin, so it's kind of a family kind of relation. And I got to know him through a wedding that we had been to, and it turns out he plays the guitar, and he asked me a while back if he could come play. And, you know, for a long time, I kept trying to push for it, and I didn't necessarily have the sway I now maybe have on some decisions.
Yeah.
And so it never worked. And then one day I was like, this guy's going to come play. Like, we're going to make this happen. And they're like, we've already booked too many, you know, acts this month, blah, blah, blah. We probably won't be able to pay him. And I'm like, I don't think he's here to make money. I think he's here because he wants to play music and have fun. And so I said, and the owners were all on board. We had someone at the time that was kind of helping book music, and that was their job to like be the gatekeeper. So I completely respect their decision, but it was kind of funny. And I said, no, I think we just let this one happen, and coming on a Friday night can't hurt. I said, I'll give him some beer. He'll be happy. And holy cow, that night was one of the best at Iron Monk. I mean, we filled it up. He played acoustic kind of in the background. He was fun. He was energetic. His whole family, and he's got a big family. So I mean, the place was packed. And so that one was a special night. But honestly, when it comes to like who we bring in, I truly that's the one thing I'm not very good at, because my wife would kill me if I continued to. I spend enough time there, and then we go home, we talk about it, and we're kind of doing some things, you know, with, you know, all this stuff. And so she's a part of a lot of these decisions and conversations, and she doesn't get paid for it. So I try not to put too much on her. We're actually expecting our first child here in a couple months.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. We're very excited. Very nervous, I think, about some things, but excited altogether. But here, you know, in the middle of the month, we're having a wedding shower or a baby shower. And you could guess it. It's going to be at Iron Monk. So I try not to put any more on her than I can.
Yeah.
So I do miss a lot of the music.
Yeah. You're like, babe, just give me a second. I gotta go mess with this brew real quick. I gotta go add a couple bags. It'll be all right.
Yeah.
Just give me like an hour or so. I'll be back.
Yeah. God, she knows I work when I'm there, and something will happen. A kegerator does something, or a fridge goes out, or a keg does something. I mean, it's one of those jobs where it keeps you on your toes. I love it. I mean, I spent 5 years in a suit and a tie, you know, my job at the time was to bring businesses to Stillwater. So I was trying to recruit, you know, national brands and manufacturing and R&D and high tech and medical and all these things. And so we'd respond. I was emails and phone calls all day, every day.
Did you work for the city of Stillwater doing that?
So the answer is yes and no. So I was actually paid by the Chamber of Commerce here in Stillwater, but I was contracted through the city of Stillwater to do primary job economic development. So yes and no. But I did that for 5 years, and I met a lot of people and did a lot of cool things. And honestly, that's where my brain started to turn on how do you make partnerships. It was all about how Stillwater's really cool, and we've got this company and this company. How do we do this and this? And we would have companies in a town, and we'd want to show them how cool Stillwater was. So we'd call different companies that had really cool, you know, things to show off. And so we'd go to Kicker. I mean, every time we'd have a big company in town, we'd be out at Kicker in their conference room. We'd be showing. I mean, I was always under non-disclosures, and they was always like high secrecy projects. So I never knew who they were, but they were, you know, big companies, and we were showing them Kicker, and we were in their, you know, world-class conference rooms, and they'd come out and go to the showroom and look at all the cars that Kicker has, and they'd turn on the wall of boom, and it just was a cool experience. And I kept thinking, when I started the beer world, I'm like, how do I create that experience for people that I try to create when we were doing this recruitment? and it's stuff like this. It's how do you make, one of the largest music festivals in, certainly this part of the country. How do we capitalize? Which, I mean, obviously we want to make money as a brewery, but more than that is how do we grow a brand? And you do that by putting a beer in front of 40,000 people, and you get them to drink a beer, and then they fall in love with the idea and the concept. And you have one opportunity to do stuff like that. You put a beer out here, it has to be good. People have to hopefully like it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you got to kill it with the can design. And that's when we ran this thing through the canning line, we said this may be the coolest can Iron Monk's ever made. I mean, it is the silver. It pops off the can.
Were there other designs that you guys had tossed around, or was it like a one and done?
It was a one and done. We knew we wanted a silver can because we knew we were competing against big boy domestic beers. We're competing against Michelob Ultras out here. I actually don't know what the lineup is, but most of your
it's that.
It's Michelob and Coors Light or whatever it is. And so people are kind of gravitate toward a clean silver can, and we didn't want to get busy and do a bunch of stuff. And the logo this year for CAFRI is gorgeous. I mean, it's a cool logo just out the gate. And so I guess I'd say there were a few additions. One, the stripes were both brown at one point, and I really wanted to tie in that teal to the top of the can. And then our logo wasn't actually in a guitar, it was just there.
Yeah.
And I said, I actually got to help design this one, so I was in the process, and I said, hey guys, I pictured a guitar on the can, and so on Stilly Wheat, we have the state of Oklahoma, and our logo's in that state. And so I pictured the guitar being an outline, and our logo being kind of all the way through it.
Yeah.
And then I didn't tell him that. I just said I want our logo in a guitar, and when he sent me this, I was like, wow, you killed it. Like,
yeah.
That's perfect. Better than my idea.
Yeah.
So is this clear, or is it actually...
Yeah, so it's actually the silver of the can itself is showing through.
Okay.
So all that where you see silver is clear.
Okay.
So if you cut that off, it would be this clear paper with kind of the printed stuff on it. But yeah, and so in Iron Monk, all of our cans, I don't know if Stilly Wheat does, but all of our new cans do this kind of barcode area.
Yeah.
And we thought that was a unique place to have fun on a beer can.
Yeah.
It's a small place, so you can do a lot of different random things. And so we wanted, the tumbleweed to actually be, showcased there, and then we wanted a pair of boots up there. It's a country music fest, so let's have a little bit of fun.
My favorite part is at the top. It's Stillwater, Oklahoma, the birthplace of red dirt. It's perfect.
Yeah,
it's perfect. Cleto earlier from Flatland, he's like, they need to do a brew where they just dust a little bit of red dirt in it, and then it's like you can say made genuinely with red dirt.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So I live on some red dirt. I'm out in the country, and there's no way that there's not enough red dirt on me and around me that there's not some red dirt.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, there's a little bit of red dirt.
just a couple,
Yeah.
I think when I first thought about it, I thought it'd be cool to have a tan colored can, or just kind of like that backdrop right there.
Yeah.
But I think after having looked at it in the past couple days, I think I like it better like this.
Yeah.
It's very clean. I think it's going to be something people want to buy and don't drink.
Yeah, and keep.
They just hold on to it. And
put it up on a shelf and be like, I was there at that CAFRI when they had that beer.
And our goal and what we're excited and hopeful for is that we continue this partnership with the CAFRI, and people become familiar with the beer. They like the beer, so they're happy to buy it again. And then we'll just continue and make a 25 and a 26 and a 27, and we'll just keep this up because I think it'll grow, and I think people. I hope the reception out here has been well for it. I'll see tonight how many people are drinking it. I'll buy a couple myself for sure.
He's still riding for the brand. He's
throwing off the analytics there.
Yeah.
He's like I literally poured the bags to make this beer, but I'm still gonna spend my money to buy it. I'm like that's crazy.
It is the hardest part, I'll admit. I don't drink Iron Monk beer out anywhere because unless I'm at an OSU event or an event like this. Because the idea of paying for something that I literally made from start to finish is such a bizarre concept. I run the forklift that puts it on the truck, so I get the grain off the truck, I mill it, I brew it, I transfer. I have a assistant brewer, Zach Fleshman, who's an absolute rock star. So I say we.
Yeah.
But the joke still exists. So
Yeah, exactly.
I do all these things. Put it in the can. I pallet jack the can to the truck and then forklift it on the truck, and then have to pay ridiculous amounts of money for it. I'm like,
He loaded it into my truck when I went and picked it up.
yeah. I actually did. I carried it outside.
He didn't even make me carry it all.
Yeah. So I always the standing joke when I go to a football game. So it's $11.50 if you're at Boone Pickens Stadium to grab an 1890.
Yeah.
16-ounce beer, 5.2%. So you're getting a really good value in the per price per dollar alcohol percentage. You're getting a hell of a deal because you're going to get a Bud Light for $9.
Yeah.
One, no one likes Bud Light. Two, you're drinking a 4.1% beer. I'm giving you a full percentage more for only a couple dollars. You drink 2 of mine, if your goal is to feel the effects of alcohol, you're going to get it a lot faster out of my beer than theirs.
Yeah.
And so you may be paying more, but in the long run, you're going to spend a lot less money.
Yeah. It's the per fluid ounces of alcohol.
That's how I need to advertise it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think even for those that their goal is not to feel the effects of alcohol, I think that for me, it's more. I would be more inclined to buy an Iron Monk because it's a local company.
Mm-hmm.
It's Oklahoma in general. So even if I'm not in Stillwater, I don't know. To me, the idea of supporting like a giant national company like an Anheuser, any kind of Anheuser beer, it's just like
it's not safe.
why would you not just get a
exactly.
local?
Yeah.
It's not as special as everything else because
Yeah.
everybody's doing the same thing. They're going to go buy Bud Light or
Well, there
Michelob,
really
whatever.
is like. I wouldn't say I like the beer if I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't sit here but it's so much better than all of the
it is.
like Busch Light, Bud Light, like all that stuff sounds gross thinking about it after drinking stuff like this.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this is as light of a beer as we could possibly make.
Yeah.
And it still tastes good. Like there's still a level of quality and enjoyment in the consumption that comes from this.
Mm-hmm.
Where if I'm out mowing the lawn and I've got a Keystone, like I'm not enjoying it. I'm just doing it. So like this gives you like a full experience that you can get with our beer.
Is your fridge at home just absolutely stockpiled with Iron Monk?
It is. Yeah. So
I need you to send me a picture of your fridge.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
need to see that.
Well, so we've gotten a lot better at our jobs. When we first started the machines, we didn't know everything about them and some things, and so we'd run the canning line, and we'd get a lot of low fills, what we call them. So it's a beer that doesn't weigh enough to make its way onto the sellable product, and so we'd have 11-ounce cans that you can't sell. It's not right to sell, or a 15-ounce, 16-ounce beer.
Yeah.
And so all those beers we can't sell them, so they're perfectly fine. So we have low fills, and we'd have a canning day where we'd have 4 or 5 cases of 1890 that were all no good to sell. Well, you take home 5 times 24, a couple hundred beers, put it in your beer fridge, get that stocked up pretty quick. And we were canning 1890 every week for Oklahoma State. So I at one point had like 700 beers in my fridge.
Oh my God.
I would take like 100 to a tailgate and not bring a one back because I didn't want them. And I'd get to a football season and not spend a dime on beer. It was awesome. We've gotten a lot better at our jobs, and so when we canned this, there were 0 low fills. And so now I have to buy it.
Yeah. Damn it.
But our procedures and things have gotten a lot better, and like I said, we've just gotten better at our jobs. So now we've got to, ask to have some beer or do whatever, the weekend beers, versus just stocking the fridge. But my fridge is certainly Iron Monk heavy.
Yeah.
But to wrap up what I was saying about the work that goes into the beer, you go to Boone Pickens Stadium, it's $11.50. The very first time we ever sold it, that very first game, walked in the stadium, and I told this at a OSU craft beer forum a couple weeks ago, and I had tears in my eyes. Like it was a moment of pride and joy to walk down that tunnel with an 1890, a beer that I made, and to be a part of Oklahoma State culture and history and tradition. All that, it just blew my mind. And my brother and a couple of friends were all around me, and one of them was like, at that point it was only $11. They've actually increased the price. And he said, someone said it's $11, and they're kind of bitching at me a little bit. And I'm like, okay, hold on, time out. One, we don't set the price. When we sell it to the distributor, and then the distributor sells it to OSU, and then OSU sells it through a management company. So OSU makes money, the management company makes money, the distributor makes money, and then we make money. So like, if you think about it, we have to make very little if by the end run someone else can make money. So we make like $1.25 a can, and they're sold for $11.50. So that money's going to Oklahoma State, which is awesome, and we're happy for that. But it was funny, like you're talking to me about price, not my thing. I didn't set it, but my response was, they're not charging enough. If you knew how many times I've got my ass kicked in that brewery, worked 70-hour weeks, cried, missed a chance to go home and see my wife, didn't get to do this, didn't get to do that. $11.50 is not near enough for how much work I put into it. When you can buy a Michelob Ultra for $9, and I'm only $2.50 more, they don't put near as much work and heart and soul and love into their beer as I do to mine. So I'm like, my joke from now, every time they buy one, they're like, $11.50? That's not enough. No, that's right. It's not.
Loyal and Trail and Heart and Soul is that beer.
Yeah, it's all there.
Well, Trenton, it's been very interesting to sit here and learn about some of this stuff, and hopefully we can do some other stuff with you guys. Like I said, we'd love to maybe do a tour or something like that. I think I saw, I had a class where they came in and did a tour, and I think you were on that video.
Okay.
But anyway, it's all that stuff sounds super fascinating to me, and we'd love to do some other stuff down the road, so we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
We can't thank you enough for coming out here and helping us make this happen, and I know the artists have enjoyed it, and we've enjoyed it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's my pleasure. Like I said, I love making beer, but I think for me, it's the people behind the beer that make it fun and why I do it. Setting the brewery, it can get lonely. There's two of us that work there, so it's the atmosphere and the experience that beer provides. And so I've always been thankful for what it's allowed me to do and do things like this. So I appreciate you guys reaching out, and I couldn't be happier that we've done this and that this beer's out there for the world, and that you guys get to talk about it and talk to other people about it, and it's really cool. So I'm all for it.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.